Counts down. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is season 2, episode 5, and today we have a fantastic guest with us. So, Goose, why don't you introduce us?
It's a fantastic guest that's very appropriate to the state of the MCU and DCEU and Star Wars and everything. It's the great Mr. Ryan Arey from ScreenCrush. Welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm having a good time.
Before getting into anything, we follow you on Twitter, and I wanted to extend the congratulations on officially passing the Dark Universe and having more followers than a major film franchise that never was.
Did any of you see The Mummy? I never actually saw it.
I subjected myself to it.
Oh, yeah.
I love the Brendan Fraser one, and I love Tom Cruise, and I was like, well, this could not be terrible. And
I never did it. I'm not opposed to seeing it, but sometimes I go like, wait a minute, I've never seen blank, but I've seen this horrible movie. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen Blue Velvet.
It's on my list. I have not seen it.
Beethoven's Fourth. Like, how do you justify that as a film fan?
You don't. You just like decide what to put on your letterbox. That's all you can do.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what you're going to brag about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the Mummy, man, holy crap.
Yeah. I haven't done it either.
So I'm the only one that's subject. So I'm the only one that basically went to Guantanamo Bay of movies.
Ooh, is it that bad?
Well, okay, no, it's not that bad. No, it's not bad like The Room is bad, or I don't know, or like any of these shitty bad movies that happen to be good bad. It's just bad. It's Russell Crowe he's just clocked out. He's just like, I'm just here for the money. And like the only person that's really trying is Sophia. I never can pronounce her last name. She's really trying, but then, well, I guess it's been a couple of years. So I can do the spoiler alert, kids.
Yeah.
She's the mummy, but then Tom Cruise becomes the mummy because obviously.
That makes sense. I wondered why his non-mummy character was part of this ensemble they had created.
She's a red herring, basically.
Yeah. You know, I'm disappointed. Can we just spend the rest of this podcast talking about the Dark Universe? I'm disappointed that universe didn't pan out, because like I'm so much more up for that than I was like the 21 Jump Street Men in Black universe, which probably would have eventually included the Ghostbusters and Spider-Man, whatever other IP they got growing up. I'm disappointed about the Monster one, because like Monster Squad was one of my favorite movies growing up. You know, and those monsters have already met, like in those Abbott and Costello movies, like they kind of made their own cinematic universe in the 30s and 40s. Anyways, I just thank you. Thank you for congratulating me on having more followers in the Dark Universe. Snow White and the Huntsman, I'm coming for you next.
Oh my God, that was one.
I'm gonna see how many followers Snow White and the Huntsman has on Twitter.
I never saw the second one. I only saw the first one, and
there were 2.
Yeah,
there was a second one,
but the second one they said like, "Bye, Kristen." It's like, "Bye, title character," and they just said like, "Hey, Thor, come on, do your thing here. Let's make the movie about Snow White, about Thor."
I really know nothing about that movie.
That's all I know, and I was like, that's all I need to know.
You're not missing much.
It's because I was thinking of Dracula,
but not the first. Why?
For some reason, I was thinking of Dracula Untold when I said Snow White and the Huntsman.
Dracula Untold was
actually,
also not great.
This is pretty good. Dracula Untold has 9,845 followers. I will pass them up.
You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. That's the next thing.
I'm going to lay down
the universe be damned.
I'm going to tweet that later.
What's Gaston's actor's name? Because he's the one from Dracula Untold. Oh my God.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
I don't know.
Luke Evans, I think, is right. That's Gaston in Beauty and the Beast.
Is it?
Yeah,
I didn't.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I haven't seen that either.
I've seen it once, but I don't remember specifically.
I mean, we are talking here about like not good movies. So,
we can pivot away. That's all my fault. I'm really
no. This is a fantastic fantastic.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I really dragged the conversation down, but I love talking about bad movies. So
yeah.
Nah, it's all part of the our journey. That's what we're here for.
speaking of which, that was a good aside. And speaking of you liking to talk about bad movies and good movies, hopefully too, as we move into the next part. Why don't we circle back to you, Ryan, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I think everyone knows you obviously from ScreenCrush and those really cool Easter egg videos that you do. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into ScreenCrush, and whatever you're willing to share with us about yourself.
Sure. I grew up in a trailer park in Ohio, and I in college started doing stand-up comedy, and then after that I worked at a summer camp for 10 years running the video department, where we filmed all the shows that the kids put on, and we made short films with the kids. And then that just, then I moved to New York and I did comedy here, and that put me in touch with people who owned the company, who worked at the company that owned ScreenCrush, and then eventually just kind of transitioned into, going from editing the occasional ScreenCrush video to being the main ScreenCrush person, just because I had a passion for these movies and things. Sometimes I miss working with the kids and stuff. One time, for instance, we were doing this movie, and the kids would pitch their own movies, right? So we would have a pitch day where they'd be like, I want to do a movie where a monster comes out of the lake. And we'd be like, great, check, let's go do the Monster in the Lake movie. But this kid
hasn't seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, obviously.
Well, it's one we would always get that a million times. So this one time, though, this is the kind of weird random story you just don't get when you make films professionally in New York. There was this kid who we were making his movie, and the premise was that he hits the delete key too many times on the keyboard, and it grants him the power to delete things when he touches them. It's like King Midas, right? So we're filming it, and it's going fine. The kids are having a good time. Well, then apparently the lead kid fell off his bunk, the top bunk, and hit his head and had a concussion. So his counselor brought him in yeah, he's going home today, and he doesn't remember being at camp. He really, you can't film with him. And we still had scenes to shoot on this masterpiece, and we were too far. It was too close to the film festival to redo it. So we had to get a kid who looked like him from behind to finish the movie. Bela Lugosi, and Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Recasting.
That actually sounds like a good movie in of itself.
Yeah. Probably should have done a making of and just done that weird meta thing with it.
The disaster artist in the room sort of thing situation.
Exactly. They complement each other.
Hey, I'm sure Netflix will pick it up nowadays.
Oh yeah. Because since YouTube ain't picking up series now, it's got to be on the Flicks.
So that's my background. The ScreenCrush stuff, I think, also just comes from these are the conversations we had in movies, in video stores, and in comic book shops, and with your other friend in the small town who collects comics, and so it just kind of has evolved naturally from there. It's why the ScreenCrush set's in a video store.
Yeah. And obviously your co-star in that video, I would imagine he lives with you. Your little dog we always see.
The assistant manager, Doug.
The assistant manager, yeah.
He's my landlord.
Okay.
Yeah, he's my boss. He's my boss at work, and he's my landlord.
It kind of seems like it's a complicated relationship.
He holds all the cards. I pretty much do what he wants when he wants and walk when he wants. So.
That's good. So he's basically the one that's giving you what the episodes should be about.
Yeah, and I have to literally pick up his poop. So you tell me who the higher life form is.
It sounds like all of our jobs though, in some way.
You're right.
Going into a little bit of detail into what you do with your videos, which I think are fascinating. Because obviously we like to think of ourselves here at the Triad as being very aware of the things we're watching and trying to pick up as many background things or in your face things, right, that are happening as shows and movies are progressing. But watching your videos is holy shit, we don't really hold the candle to the magnitude of things that we are able to pick up. Because wow. One of the main things we want to talk to you about those videos is one, how are you able to do it? 2, how do you do it so quick? And 3, how does all this knowledge, all this the plethora of information behind everything. Because if we said like, oh, we're only doing like Marvel videos, it's like, okay, one nerd can know all there is to know about one franchise, but you have encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars, the MCU, the DCEU. So tell us like how that process of like Star Trek, of like
Breaking
how
Bad.
these and the list keeps and the dark universe, obviously. So like how does that process go from like, okay, the show came out or the movie came out and we're doing the video? How is that process from beginning to when the video is finally uploaded?
Well, thanks for complimenting the videos and everything. And I personally don't think I get it out fast enough. Some days I can get them out really fast. There's a couple of channels who they're good channels and I like them, but they get things out faster than me, and I'm just always jealous, like because they get that. Yeah, it really is who gets there first. I hate to say it. So like, if you're willing to do something a little faster or leave things out just to get there first, or do a reaction video, which I don't really do reaction videos, then you can get in there and do that. So I'm always trying to think, like I try to ride this fine line between like fast and, I don't want to say fast and good, because I would imply these other channels aren't good, and they are fast and just like
comprehensive
comedy. Yeah, putting like those little bells and whistles in there, So like a big thing is like when you decide to put still frames in your video instead of moving clips, because if you use moving clips, you have to find some that fit what you're talking about. It's also harder during the pandemic because I'm not on camera, which means you have to always have something to cut away to. Whereas if you couldn't find B-roll before, it's like, I just cut to the host. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So with WandaVision and all these Disney Plus shows, I wake up at like, I may change this, but I've been waking up at 4 a.m. What I found though is I'll wake up, I'll watch it, I'll get my notes written out, but then I just crash. So I think like I'm maybe better served not doing that. And then I go through once, write down everything I notice. But that also includes not just like comic book Easter eggs, but that's plot narrative and little observations about the story. Because in the Easter egg videos, I don't just say like, he's wearing the costume from the comics. I also talk about the themes and,
which is what matters, I think.
With a show like WandaVision, which there's a lot to notice with the production design, but there's also a lot of subtext. And it's a show that's actually about grieving and mourning and how do you move on from someone, and I think in its final act going to be very universal in that way, especially with the pandemic and so many people have lost people and lost other aspects of our lives. I think we're all kind of mourning, along with the characters in the show. And then you go through the second time. Usually I'll do that on an editing program so I can zoom in, pause and expand the frame and brighten up the frame so you can like see things in shadows that are in the background. And then after that, I'll always shout out on Twitter and say, hey, did somebody notice something? And that's a fairly new thing that's been great, because you would be shocked how even after reading hundreds of comics to get ready for this show and all the preparation I do, how I'll just miss the most obvious stuff sometimes. And it kills me. Like the drone said Stark Industries on it.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't know. But I was like, that's my job to notice, And then sometimes like I'll do a cruise through other websites just at the last minute. And if I see something really good, I'll like credit them like I credit people on Twitter. But for the most part, they're rushing stuff out on the same day. So there's not many deep cuts. And lately I've had like an intern help me out and like go on Reddit and like see if there's anything cool in there. But for the most part, it's the day of, you don't get that much cool stuff. This is what I've noticed, like Twitter's usually been like the best outsource for me. So yeah, that's how I do it. And then as far as like having encyclopedic knowledge, man, Google, if somebody says a proper noun, you're like, I bet that's important. You write down the proper noun, you Google it and you go, that's who that was. Right.
It's good. That's a good piece of advice. Sometimes I forget the Google is out there. Sometimes like, wait, I should just know this. I'm not gonna look it up.
No one can know all that. Are you kidding me? There's been how many Marvel comics? Tens of thousands of comic books published. Nobody's read them all. Star Wars, and especially Star Wars, where you've had so many, canon media, non-canon media, the comic books, the novels, the video games. Like you can get lost in that if you really want to go down that hole.
Now, do you think, does it affect like the way you consume that media, like as a fan versus like, oh, there's like work, I have to like sit down and like try to figure everything out, or do you think you have like a good balance between those two?
it depends on the week. The episode before last, so that would have been episode 6. I just it was a great episode, and the video turned out great, and no complaints. But like behind the scenes, it was like I was just tired, and I didn't feel. I would have called in sick that day. I wasn't sick, but I just kind of felt like that,
Yeah.
So days like that, when you're like, man, I just want to watch this. I just want to like wait till my wife wakes up and watch it along with her, and instead of like being here at 4 a.m. and watching, keeping notes on my phone. It's not as much fun. It just isn't, like, to watch things and keep notes. The last comic book movie I think I saw where I didn't do that was Aquaman, because I was working in a different company briefly. So
that's a good one to have seen that way.
Yeah. Oh, well, Wonder Woman 1984, and that's also a different experience for me because my wife rented out a whole theater for us for Christmas.
Ooh,
so nice. I actually get to see that on the big screen. And
should be.
I had no idea. I left the movie. I'm like, why do people not like this movie? I mean, it's big, stupid fun, and they make fun of Donald Trump at the end of it. Like, it's a great, everything I wanted from it. I just don't have high expectations for those movies at this point. So, it does. It's harder, especially when trailers come out. I just want to watch the trailer and get excited, and not go, all right,
let's deconstruct this. Yeah.
Which is such a funny thing for you to mention, because I know, like, at work I had a couple of buddies of mine that are also very into like movies and whatnot. Every time a trailer drops, or at lunch, put on the big TV at work and we deconstruct it and watch it all the time. But it's not like I think there's always like a fine line, because I mean I do think finding all the Easter eggs is really cool. I don't want to do it. It's so painstaking to go into every single frame of the trailer. It's just like, I can just watch the whole thing and enjoy it, and then watch someone else do it for me and just enjoy it that way. It's like, holy crap.
The other thing is, though, like, I figure movies out now. I've gotten so good at it. Like Captain Marvel, I figured that whole thing out. I mean, I think there might have been like a twist or two that you couldn't figure out from the trailer, but Rise of Skywalker,
we'll get
figured that one out. Horrible movie, but like I'm rarely, even WandaVision, I was able to, like, just from the trailers, you go, okay, well, it's House of M, she's created this sitcom reality and they're doing some stuff, so it's harder to be surprised, and that's really a shame. Like if I saw Winter Soldier today for the first time, like if it came out today, I would call the Shield Hydra thing, because now I know that it was in the comics. It takes away that element of it, which is why even Endgame. So like I knew it was going to be time travel and all that stuff. So when something truly magical does happen, like Cap using the hammer, it means so much more to me. Like it really hits me the way that like the first Spider-Man movie did, where like I am a kid again, and I'm really worried that Spider-Man's going to die. Those are great moments.
Speaking of Endgame and Endgame Easter eggs, we noticed that, for people listening to the podcast, it's going to go way over your head, but everyone watching on YouTube, obviously you're going to see it. Your background, we were seeing like an epic scene from Endgame, and we were pointing to an Easter egg. What Easter egg is that? Somehow I knew that was going to happen. So I would have been remiss if I didn't ask. Speaking of which, I think that's a great ongoing joke that goes on in all your videos. How did that joke start? Was that just like something random you said unscripted sometime in one of the videos, and it just stuck?
I said that, and
because now that's a website.
Now it's a website sponsored by Squarespace, powered by Squarespace. The first time I did that was on the very first Mandalorian episode, which everybody was excited about the Mandalorian, but the trailer video I didn't do great. And I think people were kind of like waiting to see, because not everybody was happy with all the Star Wars being made at that point. So I didn't expect it to become a joke or a thing. It's because I was doing this video, and my job is silly. This is a silly job. Like there are people out there who are doctors, who are actually like teachers, who are making the world run. And I'm over here going, oh, that's a Weequay. Oh, that's a Nikto. They were in Return of the Jedi. And I remember from my Star Wars encyclopedia when I was a kid, that's a Biz and that character. These look like the Kenner action figures in the Clone Wars. So, like, it's a silly job. So when I'm going through and I was like trying to name all these species, I came across one and I said, oh, this is dumb. I should just say that's your mom. And I think I went through a few drafts of like, should it be that's your dad? That's your boyfriend? No, stick with mom. Mom's good. And then it just, and I actually went back and I rewatched it recently. because I feel like I needed to get back to my roots. Like I was trying too hard, or it was too easy. I was telegraphing. And the first one's really funny. It's really funny. Like I never go back and watch the videos after they're posted, but I said it as a small part of a sentence, and it just kept moving, didn't acknowledge it. It was great. Like yeah, that's how that started.
Well, it's fantastic. So please find new and innovative ways to keep it going, because that's always a highlight.
Stay one step ahead. Yeah,
exactly. But I think another to keep the compliment sandwich going, another compliment to like your Easter egg videos that I think you already mentioned, and I think it's the highlight versus some other videos that are out online, is that some people are just focused on the thing and not focused on the why or the meaning behind it. I think that's one of the cool things that you do, that you mentioned. It's like the grief that Wanda's going through, or like the meaning of including that Easter egg. So like, thank you for, doing that little piece that some people might not particularly focus on. But
thanks. Well, I compliment other channels for that too, because when you have other channels like Heavy Spoilers or New Rockstars, in particular, like when I was doing the boys videos, the guy from Heavy Spoilers, this guy named Paul, pointed out that there was an episode of the boys where there's two people meet at bridges, one on top, one on the bottom, and he like said something thematic about it. And I was like, damn, that is clever. I got to start thinking harder. Instead of treating this like a job where I get something done. It's like other people like make you want to,
push the envelope. Yeah,
I just say things that you notice too. Like sometimes I would notice things but not even bother mentioning them, and now everything goes in. Yeah.
Good. I mean, I think we run into that as well when we look at our podcasts. Is like, what are they, what are they doing right that we could incorporate? So definitely something to emulate. But as this is a Star Wars podcast, we always need to sprinkle a little Star Wars, and you kind of got ahead of us there when you were talking about a little bit of the Rise of Skywalker. So let's get into that bit right now. And like, first I was going to ask you like how you got into Star Wars, but based on when you were telling us like how you got into everything you're doing, you kind of explained that in a nutshell. So why don't you tell us more about the state of Star Wars now? What your thoughts on the two most influential movies in terms of like fan opinion, Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, what your opinions on those are, and your opinion as a whole of like Lucasfilm, Disney, and where they are, where they're going. Initial thoughts on that.
I think it's shocking that they didn't have a plan for the trilogy. that absolutely blows my mind, because that's the one thing that Marvel did. Marvel had a plan. I think it was much more fluid in the beginning. I think they were throwing stuff at the wall and like style wise, and they were forming a plan during Iron Man 2, which is why that movie's so awkward. But if Disney was going to follow a template, you'd think they would have followed the Marvel template. But instead, Kathleen Kennedy, who's a great movie producer, and I'm tired of people shit talking her. She's a great movie producer who's never produced a franchise from the ground up before. In fact, 3 people maybe have done that. Like it's not a regular skill set everyone possesses. She did what a movie producer does. She got the most talented people that she could find who wanted to do the job, and she hired them to do a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. I applaud her for like not censoring J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson on that trilogy. Well, at least for Force Awakens, because I definitely think you had the studio, Kathleen Kennedy or Disney board members step in and Rise of Skywalker with a list of demands. But the fans didn't like Rose, put in less Rose, or the fans wanted to see people together and make sure that like Luke has to treat the lightsaber with respect now. And I think that they just approached it with this like laundry list of things, and it overwhelmed J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. And behind the scenes videos of Rise of Skywalker, which are depressing, because so many wonderful, talented people worked on that. They worked their
it's like the Hobbit behind the scenes videos.
Don't even talk to me about the Hobbit. The hard work that like those guys shit away. But when you look at like that and you see this behind the scenes videos, Chris Terrio is always on his laptop. Like he's just like writing and trying to like it was like the Hobbit, and that they're like the studios throwing demands at them and they're just trying to like throw this stuff together instead of just delaying the damn movie, which is what they should have done when Colin Trevorrow was fired or stepped away or whatever. They should have just delayed the damn movie, let Rian Johnson do it, or let J.J. Abrams finish it. And I still don't. I mean, that's your franchise, man. I don't know how that happened. I also don't know. I think that in the beginning, they were very out of touch with what fans wanted. I don't know a single person who wanted a Han Solo movie where he was younger, but that was like a deal that Lawrence Kasdan worked out. So he would co-write Force Awakens. We could do this movie with this kid. And so it seemed like they stumbled in that franchise building. And I'm happy that like they found their new voice, which I guess is going to be these TV shows. Which even then we'll see, like it could be that Jon Favreau had lightning in a bottle and got the right people and the right texture. My feeling is that they're copying the MCU, and that here you have this thing originated by Jon Favreau, a style, a method, shooting inside of the volume. And now they're going to try to replicate that. I am excited about the Bad Batch. I'm excited about the High Republic. I have the first novel. I haven't read it yet. The Star Wars comics have been very good, very consistently good ever since Jason Aaron, rebooted Star Wars back in 2015. So the state of Star Wars is great. Star Wars fans are terrible.
Yes.
As Star Wars fans, we concur.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Star Wars is the greatest thing there is. Star Wars is a story that's about like hope and love, and the idea that there's a unifying force that keeps us all held together if we just learn to share the world with one another. And they shit on it if it's not exactly what they thought it was when they were playing with their toys when they were 10.
Yeah.
And I've been there, because when I left Force Awakens, I was like, that's not Luke. Not what Luke does. After Rise of Skywalker, I was like, Rey's not a Palpatine.
She's not.
I'm gonna make a video where I yell at J.J. Abrams because he's a puppet. Which I did twice. I made the first video and they wouldn't let me put it up because I yelled at him the whole time, and it came off very Gamergate and very, very aggressive. So we put that one away. That's in the vault.
Hopefully it's really fun. Version. I think to your point, I think there's a difference, right, between airing out frustrations and not agreeing with some story beats about one part of the media that's being put out there from the franchise, but another one is to wholly antagonize the whole apparatus that is making the thing, and antagonizing even Brie Larson, who is not involved in Star Wars, gets the most Star Wars hate, which I do not understand. Like, why are we shitting? She's not even in. She's not in Star Wars, right? No, it's just a rumor from 5 years ago. She's fine. She's fine. And we keep shitting on Kathleen as if Kathleen's this. I mean, if she's the mastermind they think she is the worst mastermind in the history of masterminds, because she's able to simultaneously make the most beloved show in Star Wars, but also destroy the franchise and destroy Luke, but at the same time bring back, I don't know. It's way more convoluted than any plan Palpatine has ever made.
Right.
Hey, it's Kathleen Kennedy's the new Palpatine.
Yeah, and Palpatine had some pretty convoluted plans. Wait a minute. So we're going to clone an army, right? We're going to keep it a secret, and it's going to take 10 years. We're going to use this dead Jedi. Like, thank God for the Clone Wars cartoon, because that's what I'm hoping is happening on Mandalorian, is the Clone Wars made the prequels better, right? And all Star Wars is good, Star Wars, blah, blah, blah. But, the prequels aren't very good movies. But they made them better. Yes. They enriched what happened there. And now you see the Mandalorian addressing Palpatine cloning, kind of laying those seeds. The little line where, I can't remember the character's name. The guy from Kim's Convenience who played the X-Wing pilot.
Yes.
Oh, I knew his name. Wolf is the name of Dave Filoni's character.
Trapper Wolf, and oh my God.
Trapper Wolf, Trapper Wolf. That's funny because I had a character I had to play in the kids camp movies called Trapper Dave. It was a hunting video, and I was Trapper Dave, and everybody at camp called me Trapper Dave. Trapper Wolf. Anyways, it doesn't matter. He says to that other character, I can't remember her name either.
But we don't talk about his name. We don't talk about that one.
Shoot, that is so weird. It's like every time I think of her, I just see a blank void. That's the weirdest thing.
I've heard that character is the jeans guy. It's like not. It's gonna be digitally removed.
Well, yeah, it'll come to me someday. The jeans guy. Wouldn't it be great if they replaced that character with the jeans guy?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Anyway,
please.
He has a line.
Has better acting chops anyway.
he has a line where he says to her, there's something going on out here, and he's talking about the First Order. So, but there's little things like that. If you want to know what I think they really should have done, I think they should have led with Rogue One and taken a little more time to plan out their trilogy. And there's a great novel called Star Wars Bloodlines. It's about what Leia was doing, the formation of the First Order. And that should have been the first movie. Adam Driver going evil should have been the first damn movie. Like, why? God, J.J. Abrams is the most frustrating writer in the world. Why not put that in the movie? Like, okay, between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope, obviously stuff happened. But New Hope did pick up. It picked up literally in the middle of a story, in the middle of an action scene. It was basically where the important stuff was now happening at, right? This is not, Force Awakens does not begin when the important stuff happens. It begins like when Rey enters the story, but the story was still going on before that. And this idea of like creating a shroud of mystery to replace actual storytelling, it drives me crazy.
Like for me, The Force Awakens really felt, and this is obviously hindsight, it felt like the prequel to the trilogy. Because like for me, like when seeing Last Jedi, I'm like, well, I mean, obviously Last Jedi had to start the way it started because thanks JJ. So like for me, when I saw Last Jedi, I'm like, well, this is the beginning of the trilogy now, because now everything's set up and we know what the context is and we can move forward. So like that's why when Rise of Skywalker came out, it's just like it was rushed because you didn't have time for characters to do things in between movies to like put the the pieces in different places. Like Last Jedi is literally there was no time after Force Awakens, so it didn't have any time to.
Yeah, every problem that the negative fans have about Last Jedi was inherited from The Force Awakens. No character development. You ended on a stupid cliffhanger for no reason. Literally, like you had to pick up at that moment. There was no like 3 years later option. All inherited from that. And I agree.
And
I had
and
another
even
point I forgot.
people shit on Rian Johnson for not my Luke, but that JJ wrote that Luke.
That's his Luke. That's why when I left The Force Awakens, I was like, well, that wasn't my Luke. I got it.
Han Solo says it. He says it in that movie. No, Luke, he abandoned everyone after apprentice turned to the dark side. It's just like, Ryan's just following up what they set up. He's doing a sequel to the thing. That thing, that's what this movie follows. Not like this other thing that is a sequel to this other one and then tries to but doesn't and then doesn't. Which is how I like to describe Skywalker.
Force Awakens is a frustrating movie to me because I think Lucasfilm or Disney, when they bought Lucasfilm, really thought just everybody hated the prequels. They were just determined to say, this is not we're shooting on film. We're going to do it if it's not exactly like the OT, if there's not a parallel to the OT, then we don't want it in this movie. Okay, fine. But there's so many. Can I curse on the podcast? Is that okay? I think I said the S word. Yeah. Why give such a direct fuck you to George Lucas all throughout the movie? The first line of the movie is,
"We'll begin to set things right."
To set things right. Come on. Like, you're gonna not use the guy's outline, which by the way is way better than what Disney made, George Lucas's original outline. You're gonna like include that line and have him shit on clone armies and then literally blow up the seat of government. Like, the movie raises so many questions they didn't want to raise. The main question was, who the fuck is Rey? Why do we care about her? Like, who's she related to? Star Wars. But it also raised the question of, wait, who's in charge? Where did the First Order come from? Yeah. And J.J. Abrams said in an interview, like, oh, it's like if the Nazis would have come back. And I was like, but they didn't. How did the Nazis come back? How did these teenagers fuck up governing? Yeah. Like, what went wrong? Show me. I want to see that story. That's important.
Yeah. And then you have a New Republic, and then you have the Resistance. It's like, wait, why are you guys working together? What's happening?
Right.
It's like,
but they have the symbol of the good guys.
Yeah.
And the original script is even more confusing because Leia calls the lady on the planet who gets killed by the thing, but she's not working for Leia because Leia's a general now. And like, I don't know. Maybe they were also just trying to make a clean break with all the expanded universe stuff. So like, if they would have had a thing where it's like, oh yeah, Leia's in government, we would have been like, oh, that's like the expanded universe, and they wanted to surprise us.
Yeah,
I guess. I don't know.
Which is one of these, and this is definitely a nitpick because of my profession and whatnot. But one of the things I always found very odd about the sequel trilogy is design-wise, it's been 30 years after Return of the Jedi, and everything just looks the same. And like George Lucas, I mean, kudos to him. Like he's a master of world building, and like the world building that he did for OT, amazing. The world building for the prequels was also amazing, and you could at least see that there was a shift in the prequel trilogy of design of like the pristine Republic into the worn out world of the original trilogy, which was great to bridge the gap between 3 and 4. But then all of a sudden, like between 6 and 7, everything's the same. The X-wings look the same. No, but they had 4 engines, and now it's just it's the same. It's the same. It's an X-wing. It's the same. Ship, you know. And the bad guys have the same TIE fighter. No, but these are black. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same.
They call it. It's called a TIE fighter.
Exactly.
The ships look a little different, but it's the same thing. Like
they have even less ships now. It's just like, well, before the B-wings and the TIE interceptors and TIE defense, and now it's just like, no, a TIE fighter. And there's a TIE fighter with a bigger gun. That's all you're gonna get, guys. And then now the X-wings are blue. Like, really?
They also just didn't address, like, they didn't ask themselves what's the theme about, you know. And J.J. Abrams is good at, like, in the first movie he had this like symbolism of light and Rey, and her name is Rey, and a light literally like obscures the light hitting. It's so dumb. Now that I'm actually saying it out loud, it sounds like a 10th grader wrote it. But what you have to ask yourself, like, what is the overall story, you know? So like episodes 1 through 3, how does good become evil? How does a democracy become become corrupted, right? 4 through 6, how is evil redeemed through the next generation? Like basically episodes 1 through 3 are like what happened to the greatest generation, and 4 through 6 is like the baby boomer dream, you know. So you have to go, okay, so what's 7, 8, 9 about? Is it about how we became evil again, or is it about showing like that slippery slope of what I would have done? And this is going off of George Lucas's outline, right? You can look at those Star Wars parallels I just mentioned. Like episodes 4 through 6 are definitely a baby boomer thing. It's a younger generation leading a protest and taking it over and doing things better in the previous generation. There's even like Vietnam parallels with the Ewoks and stuff. When you look at what we're going through now in the national security state and how we're ceding freedoms to become more secure, that to me says, well, George Lucas's original idea, I think, involved pirates, that the Republic, the new Republic as a fledgling government, was having trouble defeating. Great. So you have this existential threat to the Republic, and you have this new generation of Jedi, you know, and just like you saw in some of the expanded universe novels, the non-canon ones, how do they respond to that threat? How do they say, well, how do we become more secure? The new Republic builds a super weapon, you know, and then maybe Leia and Luke differ on this point. Maybe Leia's like, we need this. And he's like, well, you blew up Alderaan with that thing. We won't do that. Well, how do you know? Like, I have the Force, and, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever their little divide could have been. There's a million ways. I think about episode 7 and where that lived in our imaginations for decades. And like, oh my God, what would that be? You know, like, 7, where did they go? What did they do? And it's the same shit. Just the same thing. And I can see the headline right now. Ryan Arey bitches about Star Wars fans bitching, and then bitches about
proceeds to
Star Wars. But I'm not complaining about Star Wars. I'm complaining about JJ.
Yeah, and you're not going out of your way to harass any creators. Exactly. Which is the big thing here that Star Wars fans need to learn.
He can direct a hell of a good movie. He can write a hell of a good movie. Lay the groundwork for a franchise trilogy. No, I think he's proven he's not so good at that.
Not so good at that.
Biggest pet peeve is like setting up questions that then he refuses to answer within his own movie. Right. It's like the 2 biggest ones, and I think you've probably mentioned these in your video, is where'd you get the fucking lightsaber, which I never understood why bring it back. It's like, that's not the point. The point, I mean, Luke doesn't care about it. He builds the new one because that's the point, the passing of the thing and making your own identity. So like,
I'm like, they brought the saber back. I never cared where it came from.
Yeah.
But if that's the point, you're gonna bring it back, don't make a point to ask the question.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah, right. It's just like, and it's like, but where is it? There's not even a comic book out there. I mean, they are doing it now, I guess. And then in Rise of Skywalker, the whole I've got to tell you something, and then never. It's like, dude, you only got this is your last movie. You know that, right? There's no. This ain't Harry Potter. There's no Harry Potter, like it had Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. There's no Rise of Skywalker Part 2. You got it right now.
Well,
he had to answer it.
Probably would have benefited.
He had to answer it in the holiday special. What the fuck?
Well, it's just because he doesn't have any lines. All he says in the entire movie is Rey.
Ray! I'm still obsessed with you for some reason. Ray!
I got two girlfriends, but I want the one. It's like,
I'm sure I know the answer to this, but have you guys read or heard the original Colin Trevorrow episode 9?
Oh yeah.
So good.
There's some good stuff in there.
There's some good stuff in there. Yep.
It needs a polish, obviously, but like there were some good follow-ups there.
After Carrie Fisher died, they,
there's no way to do it.
Just let her die off screen. I don't see why they felt like they had to do that. Leia's passed away. Like that's all you need. Luke's Force Ghost is training Rey. You didn't have to like sew in all these deleted scenes that we'd already seen to try to make that work organically. Although I think that they did her sacrificing her spirit essence for her son. I think it worked pretty well in that movie.
I don't know. I found it like it's a Martha thing from
a little bit.
I was like, and then I'm like, oh, Chris Terry, never mind.
But you also inherit, you inherit Carrie Fisher passing away. So and also you inherit the audience's view of that and our nostalgia associated with that. So no, it's not good if you have options. But I mean, it just isn't. Like it's not objectively good. But I think it's one of those like we had to find a way to say goodbye to her. If you're going to have her on screen, pass away on screen, then that's a pretty nice way to do it.
True.
The idea that it took a mother's love to redeem Kylo Ren, it's a little too clean, a little too easy, a little too Disney, and it's definitely not the story that Rian Johnson was telling. Where like Kylo Ren actively rejected going to the good side. And it also, the worst thing about it is it tells us that people don't make decisions. Palpatine was doing it. Palpatine was the devil. Palpatine was telling you what to do. Palpatine really stupid. And that undermines everything that's ever happened.
Everyone's agency is taken away from them. Yeah.
Yes. But other than that, well, fine, whatever. I guess that's how she turns good again. But Adam Driver was so damn good as Ben Solo after that. And it broke your heart because you want to see that character more, which is what you should feel in that moment.
How do you take away? I mean, because like he has the fewest lines of all three movies in The Rise of Skywalker. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know. I'm not good at the maths, so I might be wrong about that. But I felt like that he spoke the least in that movie out of all three. And for me, it's just like that's who you want to be giving more lines to. He's not only one of the most marketable actors in Hollywood right now, but he's also one of the most compelling Star Wars characters ever. Because I don't know if fans, especially Last Jedi haters, acknowledge this, but Last Jedi is what made Kylo Ren the most compelling Star Wars villain.
Yeah.
Because in Force Awakens, at least for me, he was just some whiny bitch, and like
he
did not care too much for Kylo Ren. Then Last Jedi is just like, okay, now here we go.
The reason Rise of Skywalker maybe didn't give him a lot to do is because they were too busy walking back every bit of progress they made with the character in Last Jedi.
Yeah,
literally, like when he killed Snoke in Last Jedi, I thought I have no idea what's going to happen next. And we actually have a video out right now. Is it out yet? Yes, there's a video we have out. It's comparing Return of the Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. It's not doing very well. I think it doesn't even have 100,000 hits yet. So I'm going to change the thumbnail and you guys should all watch it. But in that video, I pointed out that like
link in the description below.
One of the few times in the moment when thank you. That was one of the few times in the Star Wars movie where I was like, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. Like we've seen beats from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and I repeated in the prequels, and I don't know what's happening. I'm so excited. And so for them to turn around and then turn into Rise of Skywalker into Return of the Jedi, it was just depressing. It's just a fucking bummer of a movie.
Yeah. Oh man. But on the whole, though, I think it's better to have Star Wars than to not have Star Wars. And I think Mando is it's a I'm not gonna say a step in the right direction because I'll take a shitty Star Wars movie over no Star Wars movie.
Sure.
Any day of the week. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like complaining about Congress and going, well, it's good we have a government though. Like it's fine.
Good point. Well, I guess there's some. But in our last episode, we were discussing WandaVision, and then like we did like a little coda at the end where we were talking about things Star Wars should learn or shouldn't learn from the MCU. So
that's interesting.
So as we transition into like our little discussion about the MCU and the DCEU, I want to pose that question to you now to transition, right? What things Star Wars needs to learn from the MCU, but I think more importantly, like I said, what things shouldn't it learn? Because I think comprehensively Star Wars is a different type of franchise than the MCU, and some of the things that the MCU, I don't think personally, right, translate directly into Star Wars. So what are your thoughts?
That's a really good question. I can apply the reverse really quickly and say I wish Marvel had a venue for telling the stories that took place between the movies. They do have audiobooks, which I learned about recently because we did a plug for Audible. ScreenCrush, audible.com/ScreenCrush. Sign up today. But I wish there were animated series or comic books that were really good, that weren't just like the shitty movie tie-ins that they make that are canon but really aren't, sort of like how they've embraced TV now is a part of that storytelling. But that's a lot to handle. I could see them not doing that. I would like to see Star Wars focus on the overall plan like we talked about before, but also the idea of the limited series. WandaVision, I'm pretty sure this is a one and done season, which is one of the things I think makes it so strong because it's not like an ongoing procedural show. And maybe The Mandalorian has an end game in mind, maybe not. But when you look at all these series that are announced, I hope that they're not going to try to keep Obi-Wan walking around Tatooine for 5 years. I don't think they will. I think that it is like there's a plan, there's 6 or 7 episodes and they've got that arc. But that idea of like a concise chapter book story is pretty great. And I hope that they stick with that.
Good stuff. So now MCU. Let's talk about obviously what everyone's talking about, which is WandaVision. You've been talking in your videos for I was going to say a long while, but it's only been 7 episodes, so it feels like a long time. I mean, 2020 and 2021 has. It's
weird. It's only been 6 weeks because they put out the first 2. Wow, it's so fucking weird.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but a very short time at the same. Oh my, whatever. Time is fucked up ever since 2020.
We've all noticed it.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm already like emotional and stuff this year, so I don't even want to think about it. But you've been since your very first video, I believe you've been talking about Agnes being Agatha Harkness, which I will make a disclaimer. I had no fucking idea who Agatha Harkness was until you described her in your videos. It's like I like the MCU, but I don't read the comic books.
For that.
So thank you.
That's one of the great and horrible things about the MCU is that it's made these comic book characters part of a big tent. That everybody can kind of come into. And I say horrible because like I'm an OG.
Yeah. which I think is something like hilarious. We were talking about this before you came on. We were talking about like some people like on Twitter and online that are just like, oh yeah, because we added Harkness, and I'm like, no, bro, you didn't know. You just watched the video. Right. You just watched the video just like I did 5 minutes ago, and you just figured it, and you just learned. Yeah. Don't pretend that you knew all along.
The number of people who like will watch a new Rockstar's video and then tweet at me, well, actually, this thing is this. I'm like, you didn't fucking notice that. You saw that on someone else's. Come on, please don't.
The only reason you're saying it right now is because that video came out 10 minutes ago, so you had the ample amount of time to learn it.
Yeah,
I'm not naming names, but
there's so many that do that. You know who you are.
You know who you are. Stop. Just acknowledge you didn't know, just like I did.
But as far as like Agatha Harkness, like I called it in the trailer because when you're talking about Wanda. If you're going to make a story about Wanda, you got to include the Vision. You got to include Agatha Harkness. It's like if you're doing the X-Men, you're going to have Professor X and Wolverine. It's just that's just the 2 characters you have, and so it just made sense. You don't cast Catherine Hahn in something as like a one-off side sitcom character. So no, I called that. And a lot of people were saying she's going to be the villain. And I kept saying, no, Agatha's not and this is where like my comic book bias comes into it. because in the comic books, Agatha Harkness she's someone who like people will thinks has questionable motives. And like when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby wrote her in Fantastic Four, that's kind of how it was, because she was a witch and she was babysitting Franklin Richards, Reed and Sue's son. So she was always portrayed like, oh, well, we don't know what she's up to kind of thing. But she has always been, the strongest female friend, the strongest friend Wanda's had in the comics. And I specifically say female friend because, and I'm parodying what someone said on a podcast I just did a little bit ago. Said a woman named Barbara. She pointed out that like Wanda has always been manipulated by men. She was manipulated by Magneto to a certain extent, manipulated emotionally by her brother, actually manipulated by her brother into creating House of M, the alternate reality, manipulated by Immortus, by Cthulhu. Like it goes on and on and on. And in the comics, her more recent series has been about her owning it and taking ownership of herself with the help of a ghost of Agatha Harkness. So I really hope that we don't end up with like, Agatha's the bad guy. I'd be really disappointed if that happened. In fact, I was hoping Wanda was the bad guy. I didn't think she was, because they said flat out in episode 4, it's Wanda. I'm like, well, you're not going to tell us it's Wanda in episode 4. It's just like, that's not, you may be fooling other people, but I watch too much media to think you're doing that. I was hoping it would be a story about a human being succumbing to grief and mourning and just falling to the dark side and indulging her in selfish impulses. And that's not what happened. And I get it. It's Disney, it's Marvel, and that's fine. But God, that would have been cool though.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. It's like, a part of me still like wishes that they say like Agatha's like a part of her subconscious that gain her powers. Like and even like going into when they went to the basement and having the whole scene of like the roots and like, they're going in, they're like the symbology of like going into like your deep unconscious self.
The cave.
Like I'm like, please don't be like, oh, there's a bad guy that made Wanda did everything. It's like, such a cop out.
There might still be a twist though.
I was about to say, she could either be working for a demonic entity like Mephisto or Nightmare or Cthulhu, or she could be working to stop that entity. That's very possible. Maybe Ralph maybe she's using Wanda's energy to power that book to keep that person away, and and then because she's more of like a gray character in the comics, then keeping these people like their minds buried and suppressed and causing them pain was like the lesser of two evils, literally. There's a thing I'd love to see in the show. I tweeted this, and it's just I think Doctor Strange is going to show up in the show. I just
like the last
it makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, they already pulled the look, so they'll pull Doctor Strange.
I think so. And I just want to see him like effortlessly walk through the portal, and
like it's nothing,
and still be in Doctor Strange gear. Yeah, exactly. And then when he sees Agnes, just goes, Agatha, Stephen. I want to see that moment. I want to see him like, I know you, bitch. Like, and she's like, I see you too. Yeah, it's like two people in their 20s at a high school party.
You
see each other across the room and go, I know what you're doing.
That would be fantastic.
But speaking of, you mentioned Nightmare, which kind of reminded me then of Quicksilver. What do you think's going on with Quicksilver? Because now we know that, like, I mean, we don't know exactly, but we do know that Agatha in some way is controlling who we think is Quicksilver / Evan Peters. But then, like, in that mid-credit scene, spoiler kids, if you haven't seen it, there's a mid-credit scene. Go ahead and go and watch it. We do see, like, split-second Evan Peters, but he has a hoodie on, so we don't really get to see his hair. If it's, I thought it was brown, and he still says that it was white. So, like, we don't know if, like, that's a person that she was controlling to be Quicksilver. If it's actually, I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Oh, okay.
So, what were your thoughts there on what's going on with him?
I don't really have any specific theories, just because it could be anything. But I like that. So let's throw out some random speculation. I've seen speculation on Twitter, and I think New Rockstar said that maybe he's the Rabbit. maybe like that's when the rabbit is her familiar who can transform like her cat. She has a cat named Ebony in the comics that can do like that battle cat thing. That maybe he can do that, and that's, he's fast. I don't think he actually has super speed. I think that was Agatha whipping him around.
Yeah.
Or the purple energy could be her energy, or he really is from the multiverse. The X-Men movies are now part of the multiverse, and she pulled him from that. I will say with a caveat, though, that you have to remember Marvel plans everything 5 years in advance. And when they were first conceiving this show, they did not have the rights to Fox. They were not in negotiations to own the Fox X-Men movies. They could have easily changed that, like they pivoted and put Spider-Man in Civil War. But if the groundwork was laid, it just doesn't seem like they would be bringing in X-Men characters that didn't originate in the MCU. And I think even Kevin Feige, I can't remember where I read this rumor, but like he's very much focused on X-Men right now, and he wasn't too keen on trying to squeeze Deadpool in. But Disney really wanted Deadpool in, which of course they would. Deadpool should be in it. I don't think that that's what they're doing. I think he could be someone pulled from the multiverse, but I don't know. Something about it doesn't feel right to me. He could just be another person in Westview, and it could just be like stunt casting, having him look like that. Or if he was being mind controlled, maybe when Wanda blasted him, it removed the mind control, and he's going to be a good guy. So let's follow that through. Maybe he is Peter from the X-Men universe. He's no longer under mind control, and now he's going to help her because he's free of it. Because in the post-credit scene, it's played scary, like a jump scare, but not necessarily. I don't think he says anything menacing. What's he say again?
Sneaker's gonna sneak, something like that.
Sneaker's gonna sneak, right? Like
something like that.
That could go a couple of different ways. So I don't know.
Because I'm ambivalent. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about this, because I'm ambivalent on both him being the Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, but then I'm also ambivalent with him just being some dude, because then it's just like, well, then why? I mean, if he's just some dude, then you shouldn't have casted Evan Peters and just made everyone like, holy shit, what the fuck? The internet's about to blow up with this casting, and this is like, yeah, that forget about it. Now we're doing this other thing. I don't think they would do that. So,
but it still fits in with the show, with this like meta narrative they're telling. I talk about in a lot of the Easter egg videos, but something isn't meta necessarily because you comment on the fact that you're in it. Like the show Community can be very meta at points because one of the characters in it, Abed, loves TV shows and sees his own life through the lens of a TV show, which is a show we're actually watching, right? And Rick and Morty is famously meta because Rick is so smart he's figured out he's on a TV show. At least that's my theory. So I don't think it's meta. I don't think casting him as meta just for the sake of it. It's also commenting on the fact that the show is aware that the show is a bunch of people watching a show and aware that they're watching a show, and the sword agents' names are appearing in the database, but also in the episode credits of the show within a show. So by casting Evan Peters and that person that we know as Pietro, you're also involving the audience in that conversation and saying that, we're looking at this and going, wait, it's recast as the guy who was already a recast. So we're in the same boat as Darcy. Again, she's the audience.
We are all Darcy,
Exactly. And we're watching that and going, oh, they recast Pietro, and she says the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think just to reinforce that meta narrative that they have, which is part of the theme of the show, I think it works. And the reason it's part of the theme of the show, not to just throw words out there and hope that you get confused and don't ask follow-ups. When I say that, it's because, and I've said this in a lot of the videos that I've done, TV is a lie. It's a pocket reality that exists in our living room and exists for the purpose of entertaining us so we can forget our real lives. Just like in WandaVision. So,
And something that we've been discussing, which is an interesting point about the multiverse and whatnot, is you were mentioning like Doctor Strange appearing on this show, but I think we already know that the multiverse of madness is happening. But something about the MCU and another multiverse that's allegedly out there, I mean, because who isn't cast for this movie nowadays, is the Spider-Man 3, which also is alleging to be a multiverse movie. I want your thoughts about what that could mean in terms of its implication for the MCU, just because Spider-Man is Sony and they can kind of close the doors at any point with their relationship with the MCU. So it's like, what does that mean with like that what does that mean for the Sony multiverse that's also plugging into the Marvel MCU, and then like the Marvel multiverse that's happening with Doctor Strange and WandaVision? Like how are those coexisting, if at all? If it's true that they're doing that.
Yeah, it probably is true, or some of it is. First of all, my pet theory is that there's no, what I hope happens is there's no multiverse in Spider-Man, but it opens with a fight between Spider-Man and Electro and Dr. Octopus. It's like, whoa, what's going on? And it's way over the top and ridiculous. And then someone yells cut, and it turns out they're making a Spider-Man movie because Spider-Man is like famous and Tom Holland's there. Like
Austin Powers and Goldmember, more or less.
Exactly. So or Scream 4, Scream 3. I mean, that's what I hope is going on, but it's not going to be. One thing I don't like about all this multiverse stuff is it makes me see the corporate strengths, the same way that Rise of Skywalker makes you realize you're watching a focus group's idea of a Star Wars movie. So to really understand this, you have to go back and look at the CW, and you look at the Flash, and how when the Flash on the CW show traveled to, I think it was when he went to Supergirl's Earth the first time, he traveled through this thing, and it showed different DC characters from other media. It showed the original Flash TV show as part of it. And that tells you right there, this is all part of the same universe. So if you watch this version of the Flash and you go, I don't care for that. Well, don't worry. That's not the Flash. That's a Flash. And there's going to be a million more Flashes. So you don't like Ben Affleck's Batman? No worries. That's just a Batman. There's another one coming along. And now you see they're going to do the same thing with the Flash. They're going to bring in Michael Keaton Batman, or so the rumor says, et cetera, et cetera. Now you have Sony doing the same thing. When Sony and Marvel signed their new deal, Kevin Feige gave this really weird quote. He said, Spider-Man is one of the rare characters who has the power to cross between cinematic universes. Right. Okay. So what that means is Sony really, and you had this whole tug of war between Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal, or in public, Amy Pascal would say, Venom's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then Kevin Feige would go, no, he's not. And then Amy Pascal would go, well, we meant he's part of the greater Marvel family. So Sony really wanted Venom in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. They wanted their own Spider-Verse, which is why Into the Spider-Verse was produced to begin with, to make us comfortable with this idea that we could have 5 different Spider-Men at the same time in different movies and different franchises. Because it's confusing to think like, wait, why are there 3 Batman movies out? Like, didn't we just have a Batman movie? Why is there a new Batman? So what they've done is they've primed the pump for this. Now they've got it set up to a point where Marvel, Sony, DC have all their IP together. So even if they're not a part of the same connected universe, why, that's just a different universe. And there's characters who can pass between them. So when Deadpool comes over to Marvel, I think it's when you're really going to see this cemented, because there's going to be a scene where Deadpool watches a rerun of WandaVision and goes, I knew that guy, you know? So it's, in that way, it can be exciting. I can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it and go, well, this is just corporations consolidating IP, or you can go, well, shit, is Wolverine going to meet Iron Man? Like, are we going to see that moment? Like, which is what we all wanted to begin with, right? That's why we were okay with Disney calling one of the oldest movie studios in existence and absorbing them, and overall harming the movie industry greatly. So
we're okay with monopolies as long as it furthers our nerd agenda.
I kind of am. I just want to see a good movie. That's all I want out of life.
Well, we already got it with The Incredibles, right? But now we're gonna get a live action one.
Not really. I mean, people.
I'm just repeating the thing I read.
I know. I just, The Incredibles aren't the Fantastic Four, though. And there's elements of those Tim Story movies that nail the Fantastic Four, and there's even more serious places where they don't. But like, I'm pretty excited for what John Watts is going to do with
it. Now this is the it's not a hard pivot, because you already kind of opened the door to transition somewhat seamlessly into it. But now that we've been speaking about cinematic universes and transitioning characters from one studio to the other and having different versions of a character coexist, you already mentioned the DC universe. So that's kind of what I wanted to move into now, which is the state of the DC universe as it is now. I mean, I've seen some of your videos, and you seem somewhat critical of the state of DCEU, especially when it comes to Batman versus Superman and Justice League. But with the announcement of the new Flash movie, been, I don't know how many years, but with the DC fandom announcement that the Flash movie was going to like have Michael Keaton's Batman and Batfleck and like all these different things happening so that it would be a multiverse. How do you think, one, that compares to what Marvel is doing? Is it a similar approach? And two, is that the right move for DC to do now that their house is in disarray, so to speak?
I think it totally makes sense for DC to do, because why not? You know, like you have this cinematic universe that never really gelled together because they relied on one guy to make the movies for it. You know, instead of, like, everyone has the same problem with the DCEU, which is they rushed it. They wanted that Avengers money too fast. They didn't seed it with the individual movies, and you see it in Batman versus Superman. Like, the movie's a mess. So this, a rewrite or like a flashpoint or like a reset button is the best thing that, if you want to do that, if you want to follow the Marvel model, great, go ahead. And also DC's already been doing it. They were doing the parallel Earth thing in the comics way before Marvel was. They are already doing it on the CW shows. It just makes sense. You know, Joker's an Elseworld story. Like, it's a different universe. I've made a couple of videos like, oh, what if the Joker's part of this universe? But he's not. It's a standalone story, you know, and that's great. I, as a comic book fan, though, I want there to be a great interconnected DC universe. You know, I love the Batman the Animated Series and Superman and the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited animated series. Those are great. That's the best non-comic book DC you'll ever catch, you know? I want that. So I hope that they do that Warner Brothers does find the right person to choose a tone, because you can't tell me Batman versus Superman takes place in the same world as Shazam. Choose a tone, choose a path, pick, you know,
or Aquaman,
where you're going. Or Aquaman. Well, Aquaman is like, as far as I'm concerned, as soon as they go underwater,
that horror
thing
part, when they're in the fisherman's boat, that's a movie, man. Aquaman, holy shit.
Hey, that's another one I look at, like,
it's fun, don't get me wrong.
I think
but
before we started, I mentioned Wonder Woman 1984, but like Aquaman, I walked out of that movie going, I just saw Mary Poppins as a sea monster. I just saw an octopus play the drums. I just saw a whale headbutt a spaceship underwater. I no notes. Like, what James Wan went into that movie and said, I'm gonna do this like it's the last Aquaman movie. There's like 5 Aquaman movies in that one movie. They're like, we're doing everything right now. And it's not good. Like, the major flaw with that movie is they never explain the physics of the swimming. So when the characters are fighting each other and they're like, swim fast and stop, like, well, that's not how swimming works. So how are you able to do that? It's the same problem when characters fly. Like, when Superman fights Zod, you're like, there's nothing to ground them. So there's like bashing into buildings. You don't feel the weight. It's like Neo and Agent Smith at the end of Revolutions. So that's like the big action flaw with it. But who cares? You got crab people. You got guys riding sharks with laser beams on their heads. Like,
not to Austin Powers on that.
Exactly. Yeah, so turn your brain off when it comes to some of these, you know?
Yeah.
The good thing about some of them, like, if you're honest about it, like, hey, turn your brain off, watch it. That's kind of how it, like, if you're okay with it and embrace it, then all the power to you. But don't make yourself like, oh, I'm a very serious movie.
Exactly.
Which Zack Snyder said in a tweet to a film critic, these movies are for grown-ups, all caps. And I was like,
Are they?
I mean, no. The Aviator is for grown-ups. Silence of the Lambs is for grown-ups.
Yes.
Exactly.
You got a couple guys in costumes.
It's spandex.
Hitting each other. Like, come on. Like, they can tell very grown-up, very adult stories. And they can move people on a universal scale. You know, these movies, to me, speak to me both as a child and an adult. And I think it's wonderful that I can watch, you know, Iron Man and have the same emotional reaction as a 4-year-old. I think that's incredible. But at no point would I ever say that Superman's for grown-ups. Like, it's not.
Especially Superman. And it's like, I've never been a Superman fan, but
you can say Watchmen or something like that. It's like for a grown-up. But
it's not a superhero movie, though. There's only one super person in that movie.
No, but Watchmen is a superhero story, and that is that is an exception. I was specifically talking, and The Boys is obviously for grown-ups. Like superhero stories can be for an older audience. And there's some great Superman comics that get into Clark's doubts, his self-doubts, his feelings of like, am I worthy to do, should I do this? Should I affect humanity? That are great, but they don't end with him snapping a guy's neck. You know, like Man of Steel broke my heart. Like I walked out of that movie and my wife still holds this over my head. I was screaming, Superman doesn't kill. And the reason is, if you're going to have a movie where Superman kills, that's the point of your movie. That's what he's trying to avoid. Then the theme of Man of Steel was, in the movie that we got, should I reveal myself to the world? It's very Ayn Rand kind of philosophy. Like, should I put myself out there? Am I worthy to change the world like this? But his choice is taken away from him when Zod shows up on the planet. Because as soon as Zod shows up, he says, produce your Kryptonian or I'll destroy the planet. So he has no choice. And then, okay, so fine. He snaps his neck. Now, if the movie would have been about, if I show up, right? If I step forward, will I hurt people? Can I do that? Can I put myself in a position where I could accidentally harm someone? Maybe they could have had a flashback where he accidentally hurt someone, you know, or an animal on the farm or something like that, you know, make that part of the story, but they didn't. And Zack Snyder specifically wanted that ending where he snaps his neck. That wasn't in the script originally, the Goyer script. Why? You just wanted to tell a story where Superman snaps a guy's neck. Your version of Batman is a guy who uses guns. Why? It's not. It's a complete unforced error. You know, you brought up the Watchmen movie, which is another terrible movie, which is full of those unforced errors. Sorry, guys, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask because like how we're talking about like, you know, adult comic book movies, but then I look at The Dark Knight, and I think that's a movie that balances that in a very good way, because like it is an adult movie, but it's still accessible to like a younger audience, and it's still, I mean, I don't even know how to like compare them exactly, because it's obviously The Dark Knight is grounded the way that Man of Steel tried to be grounded, but they both have wildly different success rates in terms of like comic book adaptations. So I don't know like how or why Zack Snyder's kind of missing the mark so much on making them serious. It's like it's like a parody of seriousness in a way. Like he's so up his own ass, like this is what it should be, that it's just like you get Martha.
I don't think, man, they do take themselves too seriously. You're 100% right about that. Like his movies try to own this gravitas. It's like slow motion. You know, you put slow motion on something, it's art, right? No, you know, it's not. Peter Jackson proved that in The Hobbit. It doesn't make it good just because it's in slow motion. I don't think the Dark Knight trilogy is necessarily for kids either. And not at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, I've never watched those movies with a child. I don't think they're necessarily made with children in mind. I think they're made with teenage boys in mind and adults. Like they're great movies, don't get me wrong, but they're action movies first. They're like very soft action movies, and they on purpose. This is what they wanted to do, not make a superhero movie, make a grounded Batman movie. That being said, I think they earn their character moments where Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman don't, because they're character moments, because they're rooted in character and not in action. You know, like Zack Snyder wants you to, and by the way, I don't have anything personal against Zack Snyder. I think he's actually a really talented guy at what he does. But I think he tries to tell you how to feel a certain way, you know, whereas Christopher Nolan is just telling a story instead of trying to dictate your emotions. So with Bruce, and it's important there that I said Bruce, because this is the first Batman movie that treated Batman like the main character. And Batman Begins, it's a long time before we see Batman. It's a long time before we see a major action set piece. He's telling the story of a grieving man who's trying to work his shit out. And that's what that whole trilogy is about. Whereas, I don't know, and Man of Steel, it just never hits what Clark's conflict is for me. It really doesn't. Like, he has a lot of conversations, but I never get the sense that he cares about people.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
He's a dick to that trucker. Like, do you have any idea how important a trucker's rig is to them?
Yes.
Like you that's
he destroyed his livelihood. Yeah.
For no reason.
He did save the one guy in the oil rig. Don't forget about the one guy.
Right. In the comics, in the reboot in the 80s, when Superman was kind of like soft rebooted, Clark does the same thing. He travels around for a year. He doesn't have a costume. He's just trying to do good, and he's keeping himself. But he's doing good. And then in Man of Steel, when he becomes Superman, he goes back to his mom's house and talks to her about, remember that time I let my dad die for no reason? You know, and that's the other thing too, is like for a guy who's supposedly an action director, Zack Snyder's pretty bad at staging scenes like that, you know, where you understand the rules. Like, okay, people will defend Batman versus Superman, the neck snap, and say, oh, well, he didn't have a choice. You know, the kids were there. And I'm like, it's not a documentary, right? He made a decision to stage it like that, you know, and it doesn't, the fact that we could even look at that and go, oh, well, he totally could have just bent Zod's neck up. Like he could have done a million things, you know. You shouldn't be able to do that in that situation. Like that's a mark of a scene that's not well staged.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think I rambled there. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
It's
but
like,
it's a lot to digest.
I think there's going back to Goose and like also like thinking like sometimes you don't understand why something is bad or didn't work until somebody puts it and frames it of like, you know, this what missed the mark. So I was like the other way around. I was like, thank you for giving that framework of like,
oh, thanks. I try.
Because it's so sad that they missed the mark so bad, because like you were saying, like the animated universe of DC is so good. Some of it is so good, and then you're so excited to see it in live action, and it never hits the mark. Never ever.
Yeah.
It
always falls short. So I don't know.
But you know, you have to remember. Sorry.
No, it's just really frustrating.
Yeah. You have to remember. You have to go back and look at your history and go, okay, so as far as superheroes in cinema, you had Batman the movie, which was for kids. George Reeves, you know, on the TV show. George Reeves and Adam West were not ever known for doing anything else in their careers, right? So the thing that Superman the movie did that was so smart was it got A-list movie stars to be in the movie. So it hit a balance of, we can take this seriously. The opening is this whole Shakespearean thing, and the whole middle part is like a Norman Rockwell coming of age thing. And then it turns into a comic book, and the movie knew it was a comic book. Even Batman, the first movie, Batman 89, it's pretty dark, man, especially the second one. Like there's a reason why Warner Brothers pivoted the other way. And I even saw
it's dark, but it's still kid friendly, and Batman's also using missiles and guns and stuff. But it's still this weird place where it coexists.
Well, because you could look at it like it was a cartoon character, but I think Batman 89 is more of an action movie, more of like an 80s action movie, where he's beating up the goons and throwing them down the thing, and you know, which even when I was a kid, do you remember the scene where I was 9 when that movie came out, when he throws the quill, the Joker throws the quill at the guy's throat?
Yeah,
that's pretty damn dark for a 9-year-old to watch.
Oh yeah.
And I remember watching Batman Returns and going,
"Want to get nuts?
This is weird. This is scary." Like, you know, so as a 15-year-old, then I welcomed that pivot Batman Forever gave us, but swung a little too hard.
Yeah, they went too hard the other way. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's all about the bat nipples now.
Bring Tim Burton back.
I don't know. I think that these are the only movies in the world that have to ride this line between. Well, no, they're not. I'm sorry. Star Trek movies have to do the same thing. They have to be entertaining, available for kids, but also tell adult stories. Star Wars movies obviously have their whole other thing of having to please like a fan base that's been around for 40 years, 50 years almost, and while also pleasing children who've never seen a Star Wars movie before. So I pity the filmmakers, like it's tough, but sorry.
Which are the original audience? The kids.
Exactly.
That's the point of Star Wars. Like
and should always be the audience, because you don't want, like, comic books right now they're having a tough time, because if you pick up a comic today and you read it, it's made for people who are fans of comics. It's not made for, you know, 6 or 7 or 8-year-olds anymore. It's just not. They tell like adult stories, and there's not much story in an individual issue. So it's not, the kids don't have the money to buy them anymore. And that means your medium is going to wither on the vine if you're not building up your new viewers. You know, I don't think I was in my old comic book shop back home. It was so depressing because it's going to shut down. Like they're to the point where they can't order new books because they can't afford the shipping. But people come in like, oh, I like the Iron Man movie. And she's like, that movie, those books are based in the 80s. I can get them for you, but like, that's not what's here. So you don't see people loving the movies and buying the comics. And if Star Wars were to do that, if they were to focus only on what teenage boys want, which is the worst thing they could ever do because teenage boys are horrible. If they only focused on that, then eventually your core audience is going to disappear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's the same thing. I went to when I was visiting home over the holidays in Puerto Rico, I went to the local comic book store, and it was also extremely empty. You know, it's like, they even like downgraded it. It had like a prime spot like a couple of years back in like the main level of the mall. Now it's like the basement, like in a nook in the back is empty. Well, I mean, COVID obviously plays into
Metro Comics.
Yes. Metro
They're
Comics.
hurting too because,
I was there like 2 weeks ago, actually. Yeah, it's such a time. It's
hurting too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
There's like a little delay, so sometimes like I'm talking over you guys, but it's not because like I'm rude.
Oh,
no, you're fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't worry at all.
Yeah, my old spot was doing really good with the gaming, Magic tournament stuff like that, which obviously isn't happening now.
Not happening anymore. Yeah.
COVID
has changed everything.
Anyway, COVID, don't get me started. But circling back then to, we talked about a little bit Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, all that stuff. Let's talk about what's coming down the road, and that is Justice League, Zack Snyder's cut, the infamous, Justice League film that was. I mean, this is going to be an interesting conversation because when Zack Snyder announces Justice League, I was obviously very cautious about it after having seen Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. I'm like, really? How good can this movie be? I'll still watch it. But then this whole family tragedy happened, and then Joss Whedon was brought on board. And then I had a false sense. I don't know if anyone else had this feeling that I had. I had a false sense of optimism. And I'm like, well, it's Joss Whedon. I mean, he's the best guy in the world. Hindsight 2020. Yeah. And then he did the Avengers. Obviously, he's the right guy for the DC because he's optimistic and Superman and all these things. This is only good news for Justice League. Hindsight 2020. What a movie. Now with the Snyder Cut finally happening, what are your thoughts about the movie coming in versus like having already a shitty Justice League?
I'm happy he's getting to do that. The artist is getting able to fulfill their vision. Warner Brothers, those executives should just be ashamed of themselves. They took advantage of the worst thing a parent can go through, and they used an excuse to bring in someone else. Joss Whedon's claimed that he thought he was getting hired to finish Zack Snyder's vision. Then when he got there, he found out that he wasn't. And I hear that and I go, why did you stay then? But whatever. I think they absolutely did him dirty, and it's unconscionable. And the fact that they rushed it out because they knew the AT&T merger was coming, they want to get their bonuses. Like it's that thing where you can see the executives, you can see the money behind the story, and it's just not in a good light. So I'm also glad that he's not taking a nickel of their money, and he's using this as a way to get other people paid. So I'm glad that's happening. It's not. I mean, no, it's not going to be a good movie. Like it's not. but what I've said on a couple of podcasts is there's like no way 4 hours of Zack Snyder just like no. But what if it is good? What if this original plan that he had to introduce all these characters in this movie, then spin them off in their own films? What if
actually pays off?
What if it's good? What if like Ray Fisher's Cyborg, we're like, holy shit, that's a deep, meaningful story he told. Aquaman, I truly feel what it's like to be a part of two different worlds in a way that I didn't when I saw the Aquaman movie. So now when I see that movie, it'll enrich it. Maybe it'll make Wonder Woman's stupid, shitty ending they tagged on make sense. Maybe it'll be good. Wouldn't that be great if I'm wrong? If like the story can be for adults and if I can watch it and go, oh, now I see the through line. Nice. Superman snaps Zod's neck, and then he's in whatever he does in Batman vs Superman. Now here, it makes sense now. I see the whole story.
Which is a good point that you raised, because I remember when I saw Man of Steel the first time, I did like the Krypton scenes with Russell Crowe. I mean, like, I was like, I wish I could open doors like that and close them. I'm like, damn, that's some technology we need. That's some clap on. But when it came to Superman, to Henry Cavill's Clark Kent, I was like, not for me. Then, like, I saw the gratuitous destruction, and I'm like, that's not cool. And I remember then Nani's brother's like, bro, but think about it. Like, Superman, like, that's what happens. This shit gets destroyed. I'm like, does it though? Space.
Hold on.
But
it could.
True. But then I saw.
You don't make out with the girl in the middle of it.
Yeah. And that is cool.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So
you get some dust in the kiss.
Exactly.
But whatever. It's kind of like, cool guys don't look at explosions. Cool guys don't spit out the dust when they're making out in the destruction. But then I remember then when I saw Batman v Superman, and that whole beginning with, Bruce Wayne rescuing motherfuckers, in the middle of the shit. I'm like, oh, well, you framed now. I enjoy Man of Steel 0.5 more on my scale. And now I get it, even though you shouldn't rely on some other movie to improve the other movie. But the fact that he was able to do that, I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of get it now. But I don't know. It's kind of this double-edged sword of like, not like, I want it to be enriched, but I shouldn't need to have the other movie to make this one better. This one should just be good on its own merits. So that's kind of my concern with Justice League in that sense, that it's just relying too much on the setup instead of like just inherently having its own good story.
Same, but I agree with everything you just said. But we'll see. It might be great.
Yes, and that's the whole point, trying to just living on optimism and just wanting to be.
And how awesome would it be if it was actually great?
I would. Hey, you can look at our channel where I always will compare a DC and a Marvel movie, and I'll shit on the DC movie or my Twitter, and you would think I hate DC inherently. I don't. I own almost the whole run of the original Justice League of America comics. Like, the reason I don't like these movies is because I actually like the comics, and I know the characters, and
such good stories. Like, bunch up, and then
which was always my problem, because I remember when the MCU really started kicking it, I didn't really know that much about Marvel, but then they did such a good job that it got me into it. I was already into DC, and it's never been good. So there's such good source material there for these movies that are just failing. So it's sad. There's so many good stories to be told from there. So, well, we'll see if somebody pulls it off eventually.
Which I think it's a good point to kind of round out our conversation. It's about being optimistic and like understanding that any criticism is done in good faith, because we just want to enjoy the media we consume and not be consumed by the negativity of it all. It's all about having fun and enjoying ourselves. So with that, Brian, thank you so much for joining us and being on our show and enriching it and enlightening us with so much of your deep lore knowledge. But before we go, why don't you tell everybody who's listening and who may be watching on YouTube where to find you?
ScreenCrush YouTube channel. I put out at minimum a video a week on WandaVision, more when I can get them done. And then at Ryan Arey on Twitter. And
we'll definitely leave those links in the description below.
Because I really need to pass up Dracula Untold.
Yes, please, everybody.
That's the next big hurdle for me.
We need to do this.
Yes.
We'll help. Yes.
All right, thanks everybody.
With that, Nani, why don't you sign us off?
Thank you so much again for coming, Ryan. It was great to pick your brain a little bit. And we are Triad of the Force. You can find us on Twitter, Triad of the Force, YouTube, Triad of the Force. Just search and you will find us. And I think at that, may the Force be with you. Good night.
And you as well. Thanks, Nani. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.